right. So my name is Yvonne Livingston, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at the Urban Youth Trauma Center. And I have a wonderful guest today to talk about some strong family stuff. And I'm gonna let him introduce himself because he can do it better than I can. So take it away.
I'm Jaleel Abdullah Dill, the Urban Youth Trauma Center co-director, and I'm honored to come here and be able to chat with Yvonne about the topic of her choice that she will let you know about.
So, right, it's not really my choice. It's just something that I noticed from you, some of the things that you do in the clinic and what you surround yourself around. And one of the things that you do is strong families and hip hop heals. And I know we have like conversations, and I'll be like, house music gonna take over, and you'd be like, no, it's not. Hip hop not going nowhere. And then there was a friend of mine that said that they're cousins. And so, so hip hop and house music is cousin. We're not gonna fight.
No, got to keep the peace. And I think, why I appreciate talking about this is no matter what era we're in, kids usually listen to music. They're listening to it maybe younger and younger these days, but we all listen to music. There's music of all forms. It's always been around. Sometimes we use it to relax too. Sometimes we use it to exercise too. Sometimes we use it to pump up our energy. Sometimes we use it to kind of calm down. And I think respecting the different types of music which is out there, not only the genres of the African-American traditions, the jazz, the reggae, the Caribbean influences, the house music, now all in modern forms of rap, but also, I can still hear Motown. I can still hear jazz. I can still hear the spoken word in the African-American traditions. Plus, now with the internationalization of music that's made so easy through Apple and SoundCloud and all these other things, we do want to pay attention to how music is used and particularly its influence on young people. And we don't want to have any generation gaps where they're listening to something we don't understand what they're listening to or why it's important to them. We want to be able to talk about it with them, even if we don't listen to that same type of music on our own time.
And I can agree with that. That's how one of the artists that I want to talk about today in the rap world, because it really resonated with me and so many people that are in our community, is Kendrick Lamar. And when I first heard some of his music, it made me laugh because it was kind of traumatic for me that my children were listening to this, and they were reminiscing when I was like that, and so it was one of those things that kind of caught me off guard. I'm like, somebody rapping about this? Like somebody's really talking about the pain and not trying to mask it, like really going in and saying, that no, mama, you beat my ass, like you really did. And you did you did such a good job that I was afraid of you and I was afraid to connect with, other women or, or anything, you're connecting with anyone, because of the fear of it. And so Kendrick Lamar like really brings out like the elephants that's in the room, if you will. And one of the songs that was posted in the group, and I wanted to get your take on it, and I don't know if you've ever listened to it, was Kendrick Lamar's, and I'm looking it up. It is Mother. I think it's called Sober, Mother Sober. It's a song where, alcoholism is mentioned, incest is mentioned, molestation is mentioned, and the trauma of it traveling down generationally, and then what it did to him, in the song. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't follow the artist that well, but that's something that travels generationally through families. And what's your take on that? How would you talk to someone like me that would come in and has got all this trauma from just from listening to this song? Like it all came back up.
Right. So if I've gone through those experiences when I listen to certain songs, you have the reaction that either I'm gonna turn it off or I'm gonna turn it up. And so I think from my perspective, we should do what helps us most process and heal. Now, for some of us, we might turn it up because we've never heard it expressed like that. Even if you lived through something, doesn't mean you know how to talk about it. and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean you know how to talk about it out loud. So some of us, we hear those songs which represent our experiences and we crank up the volume because that emphasizes it's like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I went through that
You're
too,
right.
daggone right, and you need that to get out, right? And that's your first step toward healing. Because then the next step is then what do we do with that once it's in our awareness, once it's raw, and once it's out? There's another segment of us which will turn that music down. It's like,
Mm,
look, I lived through that. I don't need to hear that anymore. That is painful. I was bringing back all those memories of what I went through. I've thought about that more than I want to, and I'm going to turn it off. That can also be a healing experience if we understand that is I now am trying to exercise some control over when and how I respond to my past experiences. And I know I need to do something with it though. I don't want to turn it off to the extent that I'm going to try to permanently tune it out because I just lived through the experience of hearing this song that took me back there. Is that I'm not really protected,
mm,
and I might have protected myself the best I could, but I'm not thinking about it right now. But I know at any time in my own life experience, music, my own kids, I'm gonna be triggered again. So let me use that to turn this off right now because I'm gonna raise the volume in a way that I'm comfortable with
mm.
in a context that's actually healing and not overwhelming. So I think it can kind of prompt change that's positive either way. But to your point, I have to agree, those are some sensitive issues,
Yeah, they really
traumatic
are.
issues,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Very much so. Yeah.
So we don't want to just be around it and not be aware of ourselves and be aware of how it's impacting us and using it as a motivation to change. Because if we could get some control over it, then it becomes a reminder of something I've overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be, I'll say, an anthem and a soundtrack to me continuing the struggle to heal. But either way, I know I'm moving forward with this. It's not paralyzing me. It's not bringing a bunch of pain to me. It's like I'm going to use this to motivate myself to do something about it. And thank you, Kendrick, for saying it in a way that's raw and realistic for many people.
Yeah, that's the that was the notion that I got, when I listened to a lot of his songs because my children were listening to him. And, and so, they kind of sent me some of the songs too. They was like, Mom, listen to this.
Right,
And I was
right,
like, is he saying what I think he's saying, and really taking it in, and taking the time to process that pain, and having discussions about it with my children to say, mom was dysregulated back then. This was going on, and I didn't know how to express myself, and so violence ensued, and so when you take
mhm,
it, when you're looking at something from that perspective, and it's coming back into you, and I'm trying to grow from it, I'm learning, I went back to college and learned psychology and added some Black studies to it. And so now the perspective is, how do I take that pain and make something useful with it?
right.
And having those conversations with my children is really allowing us to heal, as a family. But it's also allowing me to take it and really learn something from it. And, sometimes I write, and now sometimes if it's good, I'll start rapping myself, and,
Yeah,
the
there
words
you go.
start coming together.
Hidden talent, right? Um, and I wanna applaud the fact that you're open to hearing what your children have to say. And this is something for all of us, whether our children are young. That doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
they're dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes some of the wisest things come from the unfiltered and uncorrupted perspectives of our young people, whether they're adolescents who most certainly don't mind telling you how they feel
They do
about
not.
things. When I got my own adolescence, right? And then even as young adults or as an adult children who may have their own children, I think keeping the conversation going is critical, and it's
Mm-hmm.
safe and also accessible for me to send you a song or talk about a movie or ask about something that's less threatening, but still has some very powerful themes that can be healing. And on the flip side of that, we as parents, we have to get past what I call the noise.
Mm-hmm.
Every generation, I don't care who they are, my parents, me, all of us, when it's the next generation's music, we quick to say that's noise.
Mm-hmm.
That's not art. That's nonsense. That's corruptive. And really it pushes us to say, well, let me listen to what they're listening to and actually be able to have a conversation with them about why does that appeal to them,
Mm-hmm.
what's being said, and not only what's being said, but what do you think it means?
Mm-hmm.
Then how does that apply to us? Do we see the world in the same way? Is that our experience? What's different? What's common? And this is all under the umbrella of something which is enjoyable and not threatening. And to some people, that's much less threatening and much better space to start healing than the therapy office.
Mm.
It can launch you to a therapy office, but there are some of us who might also say, I'm okay without going to a formal therapy location, but I'm going to continue to have these type of healing, authentic conversations with my kids and the other family members and whatnot. Now, I'm going to selfishly say, and as a parent, we should always find the connections. So if somebody, brings some of these new artists like Kendrick Lamar or others, I'll say, okay, we go back to your kid and talk about where's the jazz influence, because it's there.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the reggae influence? Because it's there. Where's the R&B influence? Where's the funk influence? Where's Parliament and Funkadelic in that? And where's and then you can draw connections. Okay, well, that song that was sampled came from this song, which made me feel this way. Like on the way to work today, I was listening to Aretha Franklin, RESPECT.
Respect that.
Yeah, I respect. And that theme is in some of even Kendrick Lamar's music, like "We Gonna Be All Right,"
Mm-hmm.
anthem, of social protest, which was like, I want respect. I want the respect for my life, my
Right.
community's well-being. You see the connection? So you
Mm-hmm.
could link Aretha Franklin with Kendrick Lamar very easily. Plus, a lot of those rap songs, they're actually sampling some of the oldest stuff that we could go back and talk about. You know where that song came from and what they were talking about? Like I tell you, this other song I was listening to today, which bridges the gaps. Wake Up Everybody,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so there's the Wake Up Everybody, which is the original, which was Wake Up Social Consciousness. Let's get in the move. It's
That's
like
right.
let's get it
Mm-hmm.
on. What's going on? And then there's a newer version. You probably know John Legend and the Roots, which was a rap hip hop combination. And then there's
Mm-hmm.
another one which links to a TV show called Star, which is that's another audience, and they had a song rap combo on that. So that's three versions that span multiple generations and all have different contexts that we all could talk about and learn from when we talk about what's our shared experiences and what do we do with that.
That's kind of like what Professor Jabir taught me how to do when he said storytell, right? And
Mhm.
so being able to storytell, I had to talk about somebody else's life, and then towards the end, I had to talk about my own life. And dates, times, names and stuff mattered, to get these things straight. And as you were talking about generational, how the music crossed, lifespans and how we look at it and how it flipped and turned and twisted it. But if you look at it, it's still a bridge. It's still intact. You can go back and forth. You can cross that. And so when we look at our families, though, do we keep it open so there's a bridge where you can cross back and forth, where there's some understanding, where there's some sympathy, compassion, some empathy, right?
Mhm.
And so as the healing started happening, within my own community, my family, I had to leave that bridge open. Why? Because at some point in time, as I was going through college and I was learning this, sitting in the classroom with my classmates, and they were, my children's age, and some of them started coming to talk to me, and I was like, wait, this is how my children felt.
Mhm.
They talked to me like this a little bit, right? But so that rawness of somebody new coming in and kind of bridging that gap too, because they're the same age, and opening up my understanding to say, wait, let me listen to my children. Let me
Yes.
listen to what they're listening to so I can kind of connect my bridge to theirs to let them know that the music that I listen to that kind of made me crazy, or I don't want to say crazy, but that made me, repeat cycles of
Right.
generational violence, right?
Right.
It looked the same.
Yeah, and I'm gonna agree with you that that's the community connections. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like one of the songs I'll use a Chicago artist, Common,
Oh, yeah.
formerly known as Common Sense. He said, for communities to uplift in one of his songs, he said, You need the youthful energy
Mm-hmm.
and the elderly wisdom.
The two go together.
They go together, and it's you can't not move forward collectively without having both. And
Mm-hmm.
so there are certain things that our young people are talking about that are exposing, inadequacies in the system, as well as offering new perspectives and new energy to do something about it.
They do.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're using their language, which is not my language. It might be wrong
Exactly.
language, but that's their language on their
Mm-hmm.
lived experience. I have to be able to hear that because they're not talking from outer space.
They're not.
That's the lived experience that they have gone through, that they are
Mm-hmm.
going through, and that's our responsibility for what they've been exposed to. By the same token, you don't want to reinvent the wheel, and you don't want to make the same mistakes twice. And there's certain things that we've just gone through by virtue of just being here and
Right.
still being here, that we should be able to share with our young people in our language. See, I don't take either side. It's like
Right.
the young people, we got to embrace them and support them, but they think they know everything. They just don't know everything. And they
Exactly.
can listen to some things that elders will share with them that
Mm-hmm.
can help them navigate and build on their energy even better. And and so they have to hear us, right? That's sometimes why I try, when I talk about music, I try to reference what's the songs of the parents or the grandparents or the aunties and the uncles, what they were listening to or what it meant to them, and draw connections,
Mm-hmm.
because they have to also respect the lived experience of the elders, including, and I'm gonna say this because we have to say it, the elders who are not here so they could be here. So the elders called Fred Hampton, the elders Martin Luther King, those elders, Fannie Lou Hamer,
Malcolm
those
X,
elders,
Ida B. Wells.
Ida
Mm-hmm.
B. Wells,
Roll
Mary
Row.
Bethune. And
Mm-hmm.
we're referencing, for our conversation, African American icons. There's certainly people in every community who've kind of paved the way, and now our young people are trying to take it moving forward, but that's to be respected.
It
And
is.
some of that history is in music, and you could get kids' attention to dig into the history more when you talk about the music and make these bridges so it becomes an engaging way to tell them to tap their resources.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of like what's happening right now in the house music community, where we're letting younger people come in and we're dancing, and then we're even I'm saying we like I'm a DJ, but there are even DJs that they bring the newer music in, and they put it to a nice beat, and they can dance with it, and then they mix the old stuff in too, and so they're there and they're listening and are watching the interactions between us and them, and I absolutely love it because when I was younger coming in, they embraced me, some of the older people that were already in the game. And that's what we have to do. Embrace, younger people where they are, and meet them where they are. And, if we can do it through music, why not?
Right, I agree with you, and because we do it through other venues, so people will hand me down the traditions of sports and look at some of our top NBA players who were taught how to play basketball by their fathers or some of their
Right.
mothers. Hold on. This is the space where you make connections and you pass on wisdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a good YouTube video that people can look up if they want, which kind of captures what we're talking about. And believe it or not, is by one of the artists that you may know. People may be surprised this person is still rolling like this, but George Clinton
Oh,
from
wow.
Funkadelic. He did
Yeah.
an interview. Yeah, I encourage people to look at it. It's just and it's a long interview, and it just captures so much of this community connection. And I won't ruin it for people, but he talks about how he's embraced the noise that's happening today because he
Mm-hmm.
feels like he used to make noise, that same noise,
Mm-hmm.
something new and fresh. And you have to keep your ear to the street. And what he's done is he's used music as a way to bridge these generations. So he talks about how he
Mm-hmm.
passed on music to his sons. And then they got the people at Parliament Funkadelic, believe it or not, they still touring. And they actually, George Clinton and Funkadelic helped produce some of the first rap songs which were out. Not only were they,
Wow.
are they still heavily sampled, they helped produce, meaning they opened up and said, you got a talent, you interested in this? Let me help you put this together into a real song and a real record. And so they
Mm.
were mentoring young people who didn't not established rap stars, but they were young people at the time who nobody was listening to. Said, "Come on, you got a hobby? Let me hook you up. Let me show you how to do this." And now he is touring with members of the second and sometimes third generation in his family, all as a group. They got their grandkids out there performing.
Oh, that is so wonderful.
It's a really a family affair. Slash,
Yeah.
right? Um, so I think that represents the connectedness and being open to what the young people are interested in, and also you bring in your own elders, your elderly wisdom.
Hmm.
It's on Drink Champs. It's George Clinton, and he talks about it's almost an hour. But really, what I heard was not just music. What I heard was family and
Exactly.
community.
Exactly. So and so with that being said, I want to bring your program in, what you do, Strong Families and the Hip Hop Heals. We've been kind of talking about the hip hop, but like how can the Strong Families part like fit in? Give us a synopsis of that.
So, Strong Families is really family therapy, and it's the approach to family therapy that's based on family systems. And family systems says lots of things, but the main point for this particular conversation we're having here is that families really need to work together to heal.
I
And
agree.
we bring in the adults and the caretakers. We bring in the young person who's most in need of help. We also will open ourselves to grandparents, siblings, whoever is important and whoever is influencing the dynamics in the house. They're invited into the therapy system. Now, if it's not healing right away to have everybody there, at some point we say we want to get to the place where everybody in the family, in the household is on the same page and working together in a coordinated fashion as much as possible. And so there's, therapeutic techniques we use, which recognize, parents playing their role, leadership in the family. We do
Hmm.
believe parents and caretakers legally as well as psychosocially, they're the ones who are in charge of the family moving forward. However, no leader is good if you don't have your troops right there with you.
Okay.
So we say, let's get a coordinated family plan for how we communicate, how we get things done, what's expectations, what's rules, what's respect, big thing, right?
Hmm.
And we say everybody's also bringing their faults. So young people are still developing. They're going to make mistakes. It could be parents who've gone through or going through their
Right.
own traumas, who are in recovery. And so they're bringing their stuff, but they're still a parent. And
Hmm.
despite how helpful and mature our young people are, they're still minors. And so
Hmm.
we want to make sure we respect those roles and bring them together in a way that builds on everybody's strengths while we help everybody with, whatever struggles they may bring to it. Because we all got some type of struggle. Me, probably you, everybody got something that they're working on with themselves. And it doesn't mean that I'm canceled from being able to participate in therapy. It just means I have to bring my best self. I'm going to
Hmm.
build off my strengths. I hope that I'm going to be accepted with mutual respect as we move forward. And then I'm going to play my role on the team and stay in my lane. You play your role, stay in your lane, and we work together. That's basically the family therapy. So you think about the same dynamics we talked about, just mixing in music. That's the hip hop heals approach. Um, Take the music out, although you can reference things that are going on, just like we referencing them now, but we're not playing any, videos or anything. That's kind of hip hop heals. Is you bring the music in fully. We look at videos. We do different things. But either way, um, I think draw from the cultural context is what's important. So whether we're talking about music, movies, sports, what's happening in Chicago, street festivals, whatever it is, we want to make it real and
Hmm.
realistic
Hmm.
talking.
Hmm. And I like that you put all those things together, because prior to me going back to school, I didn't do therapy, right? And so as I started learning and then one of my classes required me to go, for a grade and for, extra credit. And
Mhm.
so, as I started trying it, it was like one thing led to another. And before I knew it, I started connecting things, from my present to my past. And so it really started to resonate with me to say that man, it's a hard look in the mirror, that I was the cause of some of the trauma that I was experiencing in my family with my children. And so when you do that hard look, it really makes you stop and pause and say, what can I do better? And so you do. I start listening, right? And asking questions, allowing them to listen to me and ask me questions. And so, and then my son, my oldest son say, Mom, we can do this. We can fix this, you know, and we can work together to build what we want to see, And so when you start looking at where you were and where you are now, it was a bridge that was lost, right? That now
Yeah.
is being repaired and is there, so that either one of us can cross, and so that's the beauty of, owning your mistakes and then willing to change and look a little differently at your children, because I had to start looking at my children a little differently, than
Right.
how they were when they were younger, as they grew up in age and different things like that. And so it just really put things in perspective to me to say, sometimes parents need a break. They need to pause. They need to step away.
Yeah,
You know.
it's a hard look you mentioned, but it's a
Mhm.
healthy look. And
Yeah.
I also wanna stress it's a hard look that you may not be ready for the whole hard look right away.
Right.
Taking steps
Mm-hmm.
begin to understand what might have happened to you, what might have happened around you, things that you saw, things you may not have gotten that you wanted,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things and that can be overwhelming when you open up that can of worms, as they say. So some people are ready to dive right in. They take a deep breath, they dive in the deep end, and then they start working, right?
Mm-hmm.
Others out there who that's scary, even the
Mm.
thought that something needs to change or I have to go back, pick back through that stuff. You crazy, man. I locked that stuff up years ago. It took that long to lock it up. I'm not letting it back out, right?
Right.
But it's a hard look, but a healthy look. So maybe you don't open a whole door and swing it fully open, but you start letting it out bit by bit, taking your baby steps toward ultimately the same healing place that you are now. Another thing is people sometimes need breaks. So there might be some people scared to go out and seek professional help, or combining it, what I feel is still essential is peer-to-peer help.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
Having other parents to talk to. They don't have to be therapists with, doctorate degrees, but they can
Right.
be a source of help, right? And you know all about that, which is why we stress communities helping each other and parents being supports for each other. But you take your steps, whether they're big steps or small steps. Some of us professional, some of us with professionals, some of us just with peers in community neighborhood groups, but start the process, right?
Exactly.
For those of
Mm-hmm.
us on that process, we'll continue the process. You never get done
Mm-hmm.
being parenting and dealing with new stuff that's going on. We didn't see COVID coming 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
four
We
years,
didn't.
right? So we had that job. So you never know what's going to be happening in this world. But as long as we kind of support each other and we keep an open channel with our children, we probably got a chance.
And I really like how you just wrap all of that up, and made it sweet, because that's what kind of helped me too, when you don't go to therapy. I'm gonna list some of the things that I use. I prayed, I had God, I went to church. I did have other support groups. I had other women. I
Mhm.
had, adopted brothers and fathers, like everybody that I could talk to say, listen, I got this issue with this one over here, can you offer me some advice? Or this one may need mentoring, and this one, can you help me out here? Like creating that village or using that village if people have one, um, to regulate not just the parent, but even the children too. Because
Right.
sometimes, like in my family, I got a large family. And so sometimes my children don't hear me, but they'll hear auntie or they'll hear uncle, and vice versa, right? And
Sure.
my sisters or brothers' children, they'll come talk to me. And so that's the village that we create. That's the balance of wisdom that's within the family. And my grandmother kicked it off. That's the matriarch, with
Right.
that wisdom and those pieces that you drop to say, yeah, no, don't treat the baby like this. Do this, because it's just real quick. My children get on me sometimes. They say you treat your grandchildren better than you treated us, and I said, well, that's when you learn, right? That's when you
Yeah.
know that the parenting style has changed and you're doing better, because you hear those type of compliments. That's a compliment to me, that now I'm doing it a little better. And so I can now teach, someone else, how to do it, and then allow them to teach me because they say, well, this is how I'm training. And I say, okay, you're doing a good job. I
Right.
like that you're doing this, do this a little bit more and continue doing this and show other people what you're doing. That's that encouragement, because parenting
Right.
don't come in a manual. I promise you it don't.
Well, the other thing I think that you brought up, which is an important point, is when we keep the communication open, even when sometimes we have disputes or we need to take breaks from each other, you get a different perspective on things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like some of the famous, songs and things that have been made where you might have had an artist talking bad about their parent and they get older. Now they're not a teenager. Now they got their own kids. It's like, oh, now I understand what parenting is. And
Yes.
a lot of things, a lot of times I have found, it's not true for everybody, but I found most of the adults who then have their own children around their own parents say that their grandparent is treating their grandkid better. And I think what adds to that is not all the time, but I think what adds to that is when you're saying you're treating this kid better or my kid better than me, what I also hear is, and I understand what it means to be a parent, so I understand why you're doing what you're doing. Plus, they may not recognize because I'm the disciplinarian.
Mm-hmm.
Now you, grandma or grandpa, can go enjoy just socializing, kicking it, buying the toys, buying the ice cream. And they're like, oh, you being nicer because they've earned that right to be nicer because they've helped you get to where you are. You can't expect grandma to come bypass you for discipline. A lot of times when the adult kids, if some grandparents try that, they have something to say. Like, well, I'm a parent. Okay. So what I mean by all of that is see all these different perspectives come to play,
Mm-hmm.
maintain our connections, right? And so that's part of the growth process. So then, God will, your kids and, my kids, they will have their own children or they will be the grandparents. Then they'll be able to say, I'm going to go treat my grandkid nice, and they missed that there was a whole lot of work and legacy that led up to these points for us to be able to look at our own grandchildren or grandchildren in our community. And we hope that they get there too. But there's a reason for that. That's not abstract, right? Sometimes they don't get it all till they get a little older to see there's a process as to why grandparents have a certain lane, we have a certain lane, and kids have their lane, and then we're gonna keep passing the baton on down the line.
So thank you for sharing that and really tying those pieces up, because everybody we have to stay in our lanes. And that's what makes the world go around, because it'll keep going around as long as we keep passing it the baton,
Yes.
right? And understanding that history that we create in conjunction with what was already here before we came. So thank you so much, Dr. Adil, for sharing such great wisdom through music, right? You gave me some stuff that I didn't know, and I'll be checking out that George Clinton video because I hadn't seen it. And
Yes.
I will sit and watch that hour long because I like me some funkadelic, okay?
Yeah, can't go wrong, Parliament Funkadelic. And I'm joking when I say this, but all you new jacks who don't know who George Clinton is, you go rush to YouTube right now and go check out One Nation Under Groove and Needy and all this. This is part of your history. It's part of your music history, not even just black music, because this is part of music history in the United States. And thank you very much for having me. It's so much fun to kind of take a reflective perspective on things which are happening today because there's such an urgency and so much emergency around us that it's good to kind of step back and think about, okay, what tools am I bringing to the table? Let's put our heads together and kind of chop it up a little bit as parents and grandparents and elders. And okay, we roll up our sleeves, we go back and re-engage with our young people.
And this is what we do at the Urban Youth Trauma Center. We have conversations just like this while we help our families, get regulated, show love to each other, and build this community and village that we so desperately need. These are training skills and teaching tools that we use. And so we do have resources on the website. Come see us, come check us out. Come see what the Urban Youth Trauma Center is all about. We work really hard to help our families, adjust outside of trauma, to live a happy life, a prosperous life.